Welcome to the Menopause Stories podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tamara Beckford, founder and medical director of Truly Balanced Wellness Care. This is the space where we stop the guesswork and start the optimization. We're pulling back the curtain on that midlife hijack and giving high-achieving women the clinical roadmaps and unfiltered stories they need to reclaim their edge. Let's get into today's story. So today, I have the honor of bringing on one of my favorite people. She's a great friend of mine, Dr. Toomer. I'm going to have her fully introduce herself, and she's going to tell us the moment that she realized, you know what, something is not right. What is going on? That moment that hijack of midlife was trying to come after her. Alrighty, Dr. Toomer, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I am Dr. Catherine Toomer. I am a family medicine and community health physician, certified hypnotherapist, neurolinguistic programmer, and also the founder of Total Weight Care Institute. My menopause story. Actually, it's probably very different from other people's. One, because I am the sixth of 8 children. My mother has 6 daughters. I am the second to the last of her daughters. One of the things she was very intentional about was letting us know what to expect as we got older. And so she was constantly telling us about her symptoms as she was having them, because in her mind, she would say, because one day you will experience this. And so I knew about hot flashes by the time because I was born, she was 36 years old. So by the time I was 10 years old, she was 46. I was already hearing about menopause at 10 years old.
Wow.
Yes. So she was like, I'm having a hot flash at this moment. And what this feels like is. And so when you get my age, you're going to have the same thing. So I heard about all the different system things that were happening. Or she would like try to say a word and couldn't remember it. And she said, it's that time. She said, these are kind of some of the things are going to happen also. And she said, people might try to tell you that you're having Alzheimer's, but it's not Alzheimer's, just stuff like that. I knew all of this long before I studied it as a physician, long before anything. So I knew to expect physical, emotional, and psychological changes along with as I got older. Now, some of my mom's attitudes are a little bit problematic. She said, I would never vote for a woman for president. And we were just like, wait, Mom, you have 6 daughters. How are you going to sit up and talk about you're not going to vote for men? And she said, because they'll be at menopause age. And she said, and it's hard to regulate your emotions and to stay on track and to think properly when you're in menopause.
Right.
Now, so I had heard that. But see, this was also a mother who'd never had hormone replacement either.
Absolutely.
So I knew all of these things. Even if I didn't agree with her on that, I understood that there were some things that happened. So there was no surprise whatsoever. And then we moved to Kenya, where the attitude about women getting older and aging and menopause are totally different. In that it is celebrated, look forward to. It's not something that you avoid. It's not something that you complain about. It's not something that is an issue. You just simply enjoy that time and you get protected. Society just protects you. It's not a criticism. It's not anything. It's just, it is what it is. And you use it as social capital, essentially. That's what it becomes. And that was that. So when I started going through menopause in my mid 40s is when I started to notice the symptoms, the changes in periods and all this stuff. I was excited.
Yeah, because you grew up in a place where it's celebrated.
I was like, oh Lord, I can't wait for my periods to stop. Because I had really, bad, well, for a couple of reasons. One, because I had the cramping. I had bad cramping when I was my period. The other is that I was already anemic from sickle cell trait. And because I was on a blood thinner because of a heart condition. So periods were horrible. I just it was more medical for me than it was just that. So I was looking forward to it stopping, and it stopped by my 50th birthday. That was my 50th birthday gift to myself. No longer have periods. So my attitude was very, very different. But I think because it was very different, I also didn't protect myself in other ways, the medical side, because I just wasn't even thinking hormone replacement.
Right.
And I was like, this is what's supposed to happen. This is no. And so I didn't think I'm having symptoms I need to stop. Or I'm having symptoms I need to whatever. Now, of course, I thought about those things for my patients, but for myself, I was just like, no, I didn't. And I didn't have hot flashes. So I think that had I had hot flashes, that might have been a problematic enough symptom so that it might have alerted me to try and do something about it. But other than waking up sweating at night, I didn't really
have any. What
I
were
didn't
some
have
of the other symptoms that you would say that you noticed? Because like your mom made you aware from early. So you
Mhm.
went into this thing informed.
Well, see, this is the thing. Even the symptoms that I was having, I forgot that they were menopausal and I tried and often attributed them to something else. Well, one, my ears itch. That was something I didn't even know was a menopause symptom until
Yeah.
much later. In fact, I learned that rather recently. So I always had like itchy ears. That was one thing. But the other, I had, so when I was having brain fog, I also have diabetes. So I just associated it with my blood sugar.
Yes.
When I had and I think part of the and this is something actually why I am so adamant about treating the metabolic what I call the metabolic syndrome of menopause. I think the reason why I did not have a lot of the symptoms is because my metabolic status was so intact because my diabetes was so well controlled.
Absolutely.
And so all the symptoms that often a lot of the symptoms we have in menopause are from unopposed cortisol. And it's that unopposed cortisol that causes insulin resistance. And it's the blood sugar stuff that causes a lot of the symptoms. So since my blood sugar was being well controlled and I was on a GLP-1 before I went into
Mhm.
menopause, I didn't have a lot of brain fog. I didn't have a lot of the mood swings. I didn't have the sleep disturbances. I didn't have any of it. So
Wow.
I would have night sweats. That's it. That's the only symptom and irregular periods. Those were the only symptoms I had of menopause. So I was very, very fortunate, but that also taught me a whole lot about how much of the symptoms of menopause are really from metabolic dysregulation. And
Absolutely.
so, which is why I'm so adamant about treating the metabolic dysregulation in menopause as well. So,
I love it. What would you say when you were being that you were aware of a lot of these things and you also unknowingly were treating this metabolic dysregulation that happens during the perimenopause, menopausal period?
mhm.
At any point in time, did you feel like it affected your work, like your edge, like, how alert or how on top of your game that you were? Or did you feel like, man, had I not done this, I would have not been on top of my game?
No, and like I said, I'm a unicorn in that regard. For one of two reasons. The only hormone replacement that I did start, and that was testosterone, and that was only because I started losing my libido. And
Mm.
so my that edge, because that's testosterone, the drop of testosterone is really what causes a lot of that you losing that edge, not just in men, I mean women, but also in men. So was replacing that. And so I really honestly I kind of have a really boring menopause story in that I don't have one. Well, actually, no, I do have one, but I have one of what it can be when it doesn't have to be a problem.
Absolutely.
I never had a problem with menopause. For me, menopause was the best thing to ever happen because my periods.
And like, this is why I want these stories out because
Mhm.
like for you, one of the things that we have recognized is one biggest part is that you were aware of what the symptoms are going to be because you had a mom who was telling her daughters in
Mhm.
real time. So, not most of the women who are experiencing perimenopause and menopause have no idea of what this process is like. And it's like a big surprise out of the blue. And they all of a sudden, they're thinking that they're losing their edge, that they're no longer the top person that they were, their confidence starts getting eroded when these small little micro symptoms come about. But your mom was like, listen, Catherine, like once you get to the 40s, this might occur. That occurs. So you were able to be aware. And number two, you also grew up when you moved to Kenya in a place where it's celebrated, as opposed to a place where it's just, okay, you've turned 40 and 50. Let's put you out to pasture because you're no longer fit in this mold where we are oogling over you. Now
Mhm.
you're cranky. Now you're at midlife. It's all these negative connotation that occurs, unfortunately, here for a lot of us in this part of the world. You were in another part where you're being celebrated. So your mindset going into this thing was like, all righty, I'm hitting the bomb dock part of my life.
Yeah. But not only that, I have sisters who are 9, 10 years older than I am.
Right.
So again, they never complained. They would just, and in fact, now I even talk to them now about their menopause. They're like, do I need to really go on hormone replacement? And I was like, more as protective than anything. They're like, I'm menopausal than anything. I was like, our attitude about menopause was just like, it
Okay.
is what it is. This is a thing though. And this is something that we do talk a lot about the symptoms of what menopause is. And I think that not all the symptoms are inevitable.
Absolutely.
And all of the symptoms can be stopped. And I think that if you look at all the symptoms that people talk about, line them up, just write them down. What are all the symptoms people talk about? Then I challenge people, write down all the symptoms of diabetes and see how many of them match.
They cross regulate. Yeah.
And so you start seeing that it's not menopause, it's what menopause causes, not itself, not menopause itself. So the problem you're having are not menopause. The menopause isn't the issue, the underlying secondary syndromes, so to speak, that are causing the problem. And if you address them, then they're and that's
So
that part is you get to a point where you're like, I really don't care. You hit a point in your life where some of it is age, some of it is hormonal, some of it is, psychological fortitude that you earned, and you just simply stop caring.
and that's why the infamous "We Do Not Care" club getting more
Exactly.
popular. But let's talk about the preventative portions, because
Mhm.
even as you're saying, a lot of women who are going through this, they are not recognizing that some of these underlying dysregulation that's going on in their body, if you can get that, and then for me, I call it balance. I know some people don't like the word balance, but get it regulated in some respects, then this portion of life that every woman has the honor of going through, once you get to a certain age, then you can go through it with ease. What are some things, even though you're not having any symptoms, that it's still important to have these on board because of the preventative state that it,
Mhm.
because some
Yeah.
women, when I talk to them, they were like, I have no symptoms. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, like, I know, but so let's talk to those women.
Okay. As women, we are predisposed to handle a lot of stress. We're predisposed to handle a lot of cortisol, high cortisol. And the reason that is society would crash if we couldn't. Who would uphold the difficulties of the world if it weren't for women being able to handle things? It's women aren't the ones who completely fall apart, who get unhinged in difficult situations. We just get down to it.
Yeah.
And so when we deal with the high cortisol, unopposed cortisol of menopause, but we've been doing this our whole lives. So we don't always feel it, but that doesn't mean it's not doing damage.
Thank
The
you.
cortisol, the high cortisol in our body, the unopposed cortisol in our body, even as chronic stress or as menopause or chronic menopause on top of chronic stress, there's a reason why Alzheimer's, dementia, other forms of dementia are higher. There's a reason why heart disease manifests differently in women. There's a reason why we have osteoporosis more than men. There's a reason why we die within 6 months of a hip fracture.
Yeah.
And all of those things can be prevented through hormone replacement. And the symptoms that we're having from the unopposed cortisol can be handled by low dose GLP-1. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. Right now, it took us this long just to get the hormone replacement as a standard of care. And I'm pretty sure that low dose GLP-1 is going to be the same.
The next.
That's why microdosing is becoming so popular. I've been using GLP-1s in women with menopause, regardless of BMI, for years, back when nobody cared about GLP-1s. Insurance would pay for it back then. But yeah, because the weight gain we get around the middle is a clear indication of metabolic dysregulation. And it is a clear indication that there are some underlying organ damage happening. And is that we're protecting from. We notice the weight gain, we comment on the weight gain, you want to address the weight gain, but it's really what that weight gain represents that is the problem. And that metabolic dysregulation is also affecting blood vessels in your blood vessel, brain, your kidney, your liver. Your brain is now dysregulated. And so sending all sorts of weird signals to the rest of your body. Can't regulate like it used to because our brain uses blood sugar to regulate. This episode is brought to you by Truly Balanced Wellness Care. Most high-level women are told that their labs are normal while they're struggling to lead through brain fog and fatigue. At Truly Balanced, we don't settle for not sick. We architect for peak performance. Whether you need a 30-minute hormone strategy session to audit your labs or are ready for our 3-month Jumpstart Intensive, we provide the physician-led roadmap to get you back to your best. Visit the link in the show notes or go to www.trulybalancedwc.com to secure your spot. Now, back to the conversation. And so if it's dysregulated, it's all over the place. So that's why a low dose GLP-1 usually corrects that. Or if not GLP-1, something that regulates your metabolic state, which is muscle or cortisol control. And so that combination can do the same thing as a medication if you have the time and the energy and the ability to do it. And that's probably why I just never experienced the symptoms of what is considered menopause, was because I was a diabetic being controlled on a GLP-1, which then controlled my secondary symptoms of menopause. So I never experienced them.
And that's the beauty of having this podcast, where I want to tell all of our menopause stories, because our stories are so individualized. A woman going through something during this portion of life, she always feels like she's alone, especially if she's not sitting and having this communication with either her friends or even the direct communication that you had when you said your mom was telling you the symptoms. That is so unusual, unfortunately, for our society, where a lot of women are going through this blind. And unfortunately, it erodes at their confidence. And if we notice what happens, we're going through this at a portion of our life where you've already put in a lot of sweat equity to get to where you are. And then your confidence starts to get eroded. And then if anybody knows how it is when you are in a top position, there are many people who are looking for a small or a slither of a way to pull you from that position. If they see any signs of weakness, that's what they go after. And this is the time when we as women, unfortunately, have to battle that and then silently battle this thing called these menopause and perimenopause symptoms. So just having an awareness that, number one, it's not just you. Number two, this is physiological. If you can get that physiology under control, you can move through this phase of life thriving, like one of my guests says, and not just feel like, oh, it's just something I just got to push through. And then three, just come on now. There's a community of women that are out there that are telling their stories. So you know that this story that you're going through, it's not unique to just you. And therefore, you have to be isolated. Now, one of the things I want my lovely sister here to tell us. Now, if you were to send a message to the next generation of women, and especially women leaders who will have to navigate this, what would you say to them?
I mean, you're probably going to have a very unpopular opinion, but don't victimize menopause. I mean, it's not how you handle menopause is how you handled your rest of your life and how you've handled every single diagnosis you've ever had or any situation you've ever had. So if menopause is causing you a problem, more than likely you've had problems. This is the beginning of those problems.
I'd elaborate.
No, I'm just saying is that if you didn't have confidence in who you are before, it's really hard for that confidence to be removed just because of menopause.
Right.
So if you're confident, whether you got menopause or not.
Absolutely.
So you can't blame menopause for everything. We aren't always victims of something.
Right.
And so, yes, we are going through something. Yes, there are many of us going through it. Yes, there are things you can be doing about it, but it's not a syndrome. So one of the things that I don't like the word syndrome, because syndrome suggests incurable thing. So essentially what menopause is, and this is, you just reframe it. So what it is the fact that one, we're living longer than we've ever lived before. Most generations prior to this, before the Industrial Revolution, didn't live long enough to ever experience having to live without the hormones that kept us who we were. So now that we're in that place, do something about it. Don't let people gaslight you into thinking that what is normal for you as a woman suddenly is not normal for you as a woman as you get older. If we've had hormones our whole lives and those things have kept us who we are, having them again later in life shouldn't be a problem. And the only reason they're a problem is if being a woman is a problem. So that's one. The other message is that if you take it as a normal aspect of life and stop letting people project their misogyny onto the process, then it becomes just like anything else. I have headaches. I'm going to take Tylenol. Okay. I have menopause. I'm going to take hormone replacement. Okay. It doesn't have to be anything different from anything else. And remove the victimhood from the victim mentality of menopause is, I find problematic. And part of that is because I really, maybe it's because I grew up in a family with women. I love being a woman. Like, if this is part of being a woman, then so be it. But one of the things I also read, and it really resonated with me, that the reason why women go through menopause is because evolutionarily, the most dangerous time for a woman is during childbirth. And so if you remove that danger, what you have is a woman with all of society's knowledge, all of society's information to be passed along with someone who's now no longer at risk of death from that. And so menopause is a way of preserving our wisdom. And when you think of it like that, it changes everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, I read that perspective too. And it was so beautiful because it really taps into the privilege and the honor that we have of getting to this state.
Mm-hmm.
And the privilege and the honor that we have of getting to this state with all the knowledge stored in. And how, if you think about it, women, if you think about where you are right now and how much you've learned, how much you've gone through, how you've navigated through life, how much you have to pass on. As we said, you've moved now beyond that risk, that high risk part of pregnancy, childbirth, but you still have all this great knowledge.
Yes.
And to be able to pass on.
But the other thing that happens, though, we are the torchbearers of society. We're the torchbearers of culture. And as long as our hormones are high, our progesterone and estrogen are high, the cortisol that goes along with that is being regulated. And so all the things that are required of us socially, we can handle, because the one thing that could cause us a problem, our hormones as women, keep it in check.
Absolutely.
So the only thing that changes is that hormone doesn't drop. That cortisol hormone doesn't drop, but the control of it does. And so suddenly we're in a situation, especially now in modern society, where we have activities, there are things expected of us that weren't expected of us before, so that even if we were not put under stress, and now we are put under stress. So when you already have that unimposed cortisol and you add stress on top of it, and then you remove the hormones that kept it under control, then it becomes a problem. And that's the only thing that's an issue. It's just simply that we're now required to maintain a certain level of societal structure without the hormonal support to do it. And that's why hormone replacement is so important, because it gives that back to us.
Absolutely. And it's something that we now have the ability to, like, now we understand it more, which is good. And we have the ability to receive it. And so, as you said, the victimhood, we can replace that victimhood by getting things done and getting ourselves back in check metabolically, so that you are continuing to be the bad mama jammas that you all know you are. So with that part, I want to know, what song would you say reflects that part of your life during the menopause? Either a song that
Well, you already know, because you were at my birthday party, so you heard my song and you just said it. Bad Mama. But
what lyrics of that? Just the whole thing? Majama's song where you just
the only part of that song, I like the beat and I like the music. The only part of the beat that's problematic is, to me, it's still through a man's gaze. It's like you're only important because it's through a man's eyes. I think so, therefore you are. I think that if you look at some of the old country, the old folk songs from like the 70s, you'll see there's a lot of women in power, like Joan Baez and Carly Simon. And there's a lot of songs out there that reflect the strength of women that I find rather empowering. Modern music tends to be, again, more about physicality than about intellect and wisdom. So there is this one song, though, from a Bayesian singer out of London, and it's called, I think, Roll It Girl is the name of the song. And I think, hold on, I'm going to tell you exactly what the song is, because I got it on.
Wait, is it a soca song?
Yeah.
Roll it, girl, that one.
It's like, it's now, actually, you know what? I'm not just go ahead and play it, because I got it right here.
Adding it to the Menopause Stories podcast. We have a Spotify soundtrack. So we're going to,
Okay, hold it. It's called Roll It Girl. So let me see if I can pull it up. And I'm just going to put it to this.
Yes, I know that song. Number one.
So now you see why that's my song. So it's like, Roll It Girl. I was like, don't let people tell you who you are. You know who you are. I said you this. Are you? Oh, God made you who you are. You know exactly who you are. That's my song. So
alrighty. Well, that song is definitely going to be played on our Menopause Story podcast soundtrack. That'll be on Spotify. So for those who are out there, when you're ready to hit that song to get you in that groove, to remind you of who you are, that's definitely one of those songs that we're going to hit up. I'll also find out from Dr. Toomer. She said Carly Simon, a song from Carly Simon and Joan Baez.
Well, they're like, it's just more who they are as performers. They were just, especially Joan Baez was all about female empowerment. Carly Simon had just a magnificent wordplay. Like I said, my sisters were much older than I am. So I heard a lot of those songs as I was growing up because that's who they listened to. And so, and I just tend to prefer songs written for and about women, by women, because it's less about how we look and how we sound and how we make men feel, and more about how and who we are. And so, and I just I'm just very, very fortunate to have been raised by a woman who really liked being a woman. It was never, I can't do this because, or nobody will let me because, it was none of that. It was just like she was all up in her power. And I saw it and I experienced it, and to the point where and I'm just going to tell this story because a lot of times also when we hit menopause, we start complaining about the way our body changes. And, we're not the same as we're 20 years old. We should not want a 20-year-old body, even if it's buried in your backyard. You don't want one. So, that's so you don't want a 20-year-old body. So, I remember being about 7 or 8, and I was sitting because my mother, in order to keep us from tearing up the house, she would always gather us, the younger ones, and make us sit in one spot while she did whatever. So she would put a blanket on the floor. We were not allowed to leave the barriers of that blanket. And we weren't allowed to touch each other either. So we couldn't fight and we couldn't leave the thing. While she went and could just take a leisurely shower. That's how she would take her shower. But I would remember her coming out of the shower and drying off and putting on her lotion and, always, and I would just sit there going, and I remember, she had, there was a woman who had 8 children. She had stretch marks. She had some cellulite. And I just remember the care she took of her skin and how she just slowly took care of herself. And I remember seeing this thing, I can't wait until I have stretch marks and I have fat rolls and I'm going to be a woman. I remember having that thought. And so as I got older and my body started changing, I didn't have the same psychological reaction because it was like, oh, I'm a woman now. I have stretch marks, and so it makes a difference. The message we give our children and that we pass along really matters. It really does.
It's interesting because my son, my youngest, who's 7, Timothy, he's been asking me as of late, Mama, what's menopause? What is menopause? And as we raise our children, it's important, as you said, we pass on this information because he, as he's seen his mom go through this. And when he has the honor of having a family and even whomever he chooses, if they're going through that phase in life, it won't be anything of shame because he knows what menopause is. And by then he's called menopause.
That's so cute.
Alrighty. And with that, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Toomer, for stopping by and telling us your menopause story. And I want to also thank those who are listening. I do not take it for granted for you to giving us this equity, which is a little bit of your time throughout the day. I look forward to bringing you more stories, and I hope you enjoyed today's. Leave us a 5-star review and also a comment, and let us know if there are any other menopause stories that you have out there that you'd like to tell us. With that, we say goodbye. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Menopause Stories podcast. If today's conversation hit home, don't let your story stay stuck in that midlife hijack. Head over to the show notes to book your strategy session and to join the movement of women redefining their power. I'm Dr. Tamara Beckford. Stay optimized, stay bold, and I'll catch you on the next episode.